This is just a quick tutorial on, again, continuing to use some of the healing brush tools, the cloning tool, and now we're going to add a couple of others also, which is the patch tool and the fill content aware tools. These are generally used when you have a larger expanse of color. You don't have nearly as much detail in it. This wouldn't necessarily work so well if you were zoomed in and you had a person that had a lot of freckles or small fine things on it, but it's great for sand or a background or a sky or something like that that doesn't have a lot of detail. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer by grabbing it and pulling it down and letting it go on the new layer icon. That way I'm just going to make sure that I'm not going to make a mistake. I'm going to zoom in. The picture's not all that high resolution, but I'm going to go ahead and get the spot healing brush tool. If I have this brush slightly bigger than the object I want to get rid of and just click on it, a lot of times it will go ahead and fix things automatically, again, like on somebody's face when you're just trying to get rid of one tiny blemish or one thing. But in this particular case, there's so many other things that are close to it that it's getting hard to use. So I'm going to switch over and use the healing brush tool. And I am going to try to notice the sand is kind of yellow here, but as I get closer to the water line it gets darker. Therefore I cannot just approach it side to side or up and down. I have to kind of move in the diagonal as my color is changing. But if I option click a source point here, then brush across this, it'll go ahead and get rid of it. Option click over here, I can go ahead and get rid of this. So getting rid of the small things, that didn't get rid of all of it. So I could go back and hit it again, pop, pop, and it's pulling the color from the X. I could get rid of things with that fairly easily. The problem is there's so many different footprints, and the dog, if I was to, I'd have to chew him up by getting little pieces by sampling from here to slowly attack this side. Or if I came down here, I would notice that the sand is a little bit darker. So I might have a problem working in the other direction. Again, I could always use the cloning tool here too to get rid of some of that. This one I just have to be very careful about the color differences again on the sand and make sure that I'm not cloning with an area that has a rock, so it adds another one. But as you can start to tell here, especially if I came in and did a lot of this, option, click, and I'm trying to stay with the waterline, option, drag. It doesn't really matter whether I'm using the cloning tool or if I'm using the healing brush tool. The more times I'm in here doing things, the more likely it is that my object is going to start to, from this distance, I can start to see some of these little smudge rings because the sand just doesn't have enough detail in it, and therefore it's causing me problems. I'm going to throw the background copy away. I'm going to make another copy of the background. So here's a couple of other tools that you might want to consider using when you have a larger area to get rid of, particularly in a sky. Underneath the healing brushes is the patch tool. I'm not going to go try to get rid of both dogs at the same time, but if I try to get rid of this dog, I'm just using the tool. I don't have to try to be right on the edge, but I also wouldn't want to be this far away as I was drawing that. And then as soon as I'm sitting here, I'm going to go ahead and pull it in this direction. And I may not be able to get all of that out of there, so I'm just going to maybe try to get rid of part of it at a time. Let go, and it's going to fill a lot of that area in. Same kind of thing, I can go ahead and try to grab in here, get this part of the object, and pull in this direction, and pull that on in. And then I could get rid of this dog in the exact same way. So I might be able to remove each dog with one or two uses of the patch tool. Then I can come back in and try to use it along in here. I just would have to remember to draw diagonally because the sand is getting darker the closer it gets to the water. But maybe one or two patches to get rid of these. One patch here, another patch here, another patch in here, and I could get rid of an awful lot of this. However, there is one last tool, because maybe this is even too much detail for that particular tool. I could go ahead and just draw a selection around this dog. This time I'm not using the patch tool, I'm using the lasso tool or some other object just to make a quick mask. Then I'm going to go up to Edit, Fill, and instead of filling it like we've been doing with the foreground or background color or black or white, let go on Content Aware and click OK. And when it's done, it got rid of all of that by analyzing all the different areas here in the sand. I could probably do that to almost get rid of both dogs at the same time, and I could continue to use that over in here. Again, that probably never works on something small with a lot of detail like a face. There's too many shadows underneath the nose, the eyes, the chin to be able to do that. But on big areas where you need more sky, you need more something very simple in color, that's an excellent option as well. One more thing I could do, which you don't necessarily need to do, is as I'm looking at this picture, I see this kind of bluish flare. It's a really hot spot on this picture. It's just not really well set. So all the wave detail disappears in here and the sand appears to be blue. One more thing I can do with the cloning tool that has nothing to do with actually getting rid of detail. And that is I can change the mode from normal to color. If I come over in this area with a fairly large brush and option click on the sandy color, and then I come over in here and I push and I hold down once. And by the way, it looks like it's fixed a lot of that. It got rid of some of the blue, but now it's overly fluorescent yellow. One of the best features that Photoshop has is a lot of times you can fade the opacity back on something. I normally don't use changing the opacity or the flow. Just leave those at 100%. But if after I've done that object, if I hold down Command Shift F, it's going to pop up a fade function. If I leave it at 100, that means it's going to bring all this in. If I pull this back to 0, it brings none of it in. So a lot of times I can bring part of that in to basically fix my problem. And another way that I can use this is I can hit Command Shift F and I could just type in 40 or 4 and it's going to pop to that particular number. So I'm going to do that here. And then I'm going to option click here and I'm going to drag across this part of the sand. Command Shift 40. And I got rid of most of that kind of weird flare that was popping on. So again, this was, you can use the spot healing brush, you can use the healing brush, you can use the clone tool, but sometimes when you're trying to get rid of a larger area like this, either using the patch tool or which allows you to just select the object with the tool, or using the lasso tool and drawing a rough lasso around an object and going edit, fill, then making sure that you select the content aware, which I don't have a selection so it's not going to do. But grabbing an object and edit, fill, content aware can be a great way to get rid of large patches. And I can use the cloning tool for something other than just normal, like I did over here to use it to get rid of the color. Problem is I need to remember that this is set on color. So if the next thing I do is I come in and I try to use the cloning tool to go get rid of these dog prints, it's not going to do anything because it's just looking to change the color from here to here. So it's going to appear that Photoshop is stuck in a loop. In order to reaccess that, I have to remember what I've done and kind of be aware of my surroundings and change this back to normal so that I could use the cloning tool to potentially come back in and use it to get rid of dog prints.